You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 20, Episode 4. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. On today's episode, brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe, we're talking about one aspect of your events that you can redesign to be more inclusive for everybody. Well, today's episode is a very different topic from anything we've ever addressed on Trade Show Insights before, but I think it's something that is well worthy of a conversation. So I've got a great expert here today that we're going to talk to. Laura Nelson is the co-founder of Sober Life Rocks, a movement dedicated to celebrating sober choices and creating inclusive spaces for connection and growth. After choosing sobriety in 2020, she recognized the need for more alcohol-free options in professional and social settings. Through Sober Life Rocks, Laura is helping to shift cultural norms and empower individuals to embrace a vibrant alcohol-free lifestyle. She's also the author of the Inclusive Event Planner, a practical guide for organizations looking to create welcoming, accessible, and diverse events. Laura, welcome to Trade Show Insights.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I think this is an important conversation to have, partly because I've never been someone who drinks. And so to the whole feeling of being ostracized or, not having any options other than just, I'll take a Coke or a Sprite, at an event. It's so nice to see that more and more events are now starting to get the fact that they need to have some of these options. And I know in your book, you talk about how, why is this such a big deal? Because we have, vegan options and gluten-free options and all that. Why do you think it's taking organizations so long to recognize the fact that they need to have alcohol-free options as well?
I honestly, and thank you. That's a great start for this. I think it's just that there hasn't been awareness. One of the things about alcohol-free options is that we need more people who step up to say they want it. And what happens a lot of times, especially in business and conference settings and event settings, is that people just take what's available because they don't want to deal with what do you have and so we just grab a drink, we put a lime in it because we don't want to deal with the pressure of why are you not drinking or what do you have? And so the issue is because there's not more people asking for it, the meeting planners aren't giving it to us because it's not vocalized, it's not verbalized. And so what I want to do and what I'm doing with this book is to bring to meeting planners the enlightenment that there's a quarter of their attendees who don't want to drink, who would love to have better options. And we just haven't put an awareness on it. And I'm sure there was a day for vegans and vegetarians where I remember going to conferences and people had to go to a special table to go get their lunch. And now it's served right with everyone else. So I think it's just an awareness thing that I'm hoping to put a spotlight on. There are some challenges we have, which we can talk about, but that's really why it hasn't happened up to this point.
Well, and I think too, you said that a quarter of the audience is wanting this. I think that even the 75% would be open to trying different things. I don't think that they're necessarily like, we have to have all the alcohol options. It does make for a very different environment after hours. And I know you talk about that a lot in your book as well, but how the event tone changes. I can remember years ago, an after hours event, and one of the speakers was a retired baseball player, and he and I were having a conversation, and I was this close to getting to try on a World Series ring when another female walked in who was obviously had a few too many, and just took over the conversation and was just kind of like, babbling on. And you could tell his reaction changed. And he immediately was like, he was not comfortable taking off that ring in that environment. He was not going to, let her have hold of it. And so it just, that really showed me that people turn it. And this person, this female, when I saw her the next day, she had no memory of this whole situation of what had happened. So it really does change the tone. And for me, I've always felt like a lot of these after hours events are very unprofessional because people don't know when to quit.
And that, that is, but it's the norm. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just the way we've always done it, right? A lot of times we use, up till more recently, I mean, alcohol is the how we connect, right? The bar, we go get a drink, we go network. And I think a lot of it coming out of COVID, going back to events, people are looking for more out of the events. I mean, we can get so much of the information online, but what we're going for is connection. And if the connection is lacking in the evening because it's all focused around the alcohol, and that's just the way we've always done it. And I do feel like event organizers and planners, they feel like to get more people to show up, let's put more alcohol in the equation. And that's not what is needed and wanted. People want connection. And we're not saying take alcohol out of the equation, but like in my book, I talk about how we're coming for connection. Let's feed into the connection. What does that look like? And alcohol can be a sideline. That's fine, but it doesn't need to be the main stage thing that we do in the evening.
Well, and exactly like you said, if there's more options sans alcohol, then maybe more people will take those options. And it's in society in general, the whole idea of mocktails and zero proof cocktails, whatever you want to call them, those are becoming more and more prevalent. And they're not, a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's just like a virgin pina colada or it's a Shirley Temple. There are some very creative drinks out there. There are a lot of options. So talk a little bit about what it is, how we kind of need to reframe and rethink about how some of these drinks can be included.
Yeah. So I've talked to a lot of, because I'm a speaker in my industry. So I've been to tons of conferences. That's how this whole thing got started. And a lot of times I'll talk to meeting planners and they'll say, well, we have a mocktail option, or we have something with, most of the time that what they give is out of a spout or a pitcher over here on the side. It's some sticky, sweet, lemonade-y thing that I don't want to drink. If I'm not drinking alcohol, I also don't want to drink all that sugar, or I don't want something different than what everybody else is drinking. So the first thing that I talk about and when it comes to the bar is like, let's find options that are adult options, sans alcohol, but that are similar or the same as what everybody else is drinking. Because I don't want to stand out as like I'm sitting at the kids' table. I don't want my little sticky sweet, something. I want options that are comparable to what's being offered. Now, many times in a conference, it's not quite the same as a bar or a restaurant where they have the whole cocktail, mocktail person who, they're a trained bartender who can make the fancy drinks. But we do have options for people with alcohol. We need similar options without alcohol. And there's such a huge alcohol-free movement coming. So many good companies, so many good alcohol-free drinks that you can offer. Beers now. I just tried one last night from Go Brewing. You can't tell there's no alcohol in there, and it's just as good as every IPA I've ever had. You can get pop cans that you could pour over ice, and it's really good options. We need to just offer better than Coke, Sprite, and club soda with a lime in it. And that's really pushing the element of what's out there and what's available.
Yeah. Well, and I know, like I said, I don't drink. My husband and I don't drink. We have a whole collection of mocktail books that we, and there's more and more coming out all the time now. And a lot of these mocktails are very creative and very complex. And, so it could even be the kind of thing where, maybe there's one signature mocktail that they're offering. Like you said, they may not have a full bar and be able to do anything that anybody could ever want. But if they have that creative drink, then that's giving people, and it might even kind of give that FOMO element to the people who are drinking alcohol. It's like, ooh, what's that drink? That looks really interesting.
And actually that happened. There's a conference we worked with this year, and they actually did a whole zero proof. They had a sign when you came in. There was a zero proof bar, and there was 4 options of mocktails, and they named them really funny, and they were real good drinks. More people drank the non-alcoholic options than the alcohol options because they were there at a 2-day business conference. And even the people who started with a cocktail then changed to a mocktail because they knew they had to be up at 8 a.m. and the drinks were just as good.
Yeah.
Many times if you don't have that option, if you're still sitting around networking, I'll have another glass. Okay, I'll have another wine. And then you wake up in the morning, maybe 1 glass too many the night before with a headache. And when we're going to these functions, we want to feel good in the morning. Nobody ever regrets not drinking too much the night before the next morning, right? So having this is better for the meeting in general too, right? Because people are actually going to remember the conversation that they had the night before in the networking.
Well, and it's more likely that business is going to happen too. I mean, once people get to the point where they're not really thinking clearly, they're probably not going to, even if they make a connection at that after hours event, like you said, they're probably not going to remember the conversation the next day, or they're going to think, who was that person that I talked to? So I think keeping the clear heads. And I love how you said that, they might start with an alcoholic beverage, but then they switched over. So they didn't drink too much. They switched over and drank the mocktails.
Right.
So, I think giving people options. And I know one of the objections that the event organizers say, this is going to add a lot of expense. We have this other option, but you have some really interesting perspectives on that you've shared as well.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, so the challenge I was mentioning in the beginning, the challenge that we're up against is that there are a lot of contracts with large hotels, conference centers, event spaces. And so those contracts, I have an opportunity to speak to meeting planners coming up in April in Vegas. We have to push the contracts because the contracts are around alcohol. It's the big alcohol, and you make a better percentage, and there's a quota you have to sell, and you can make just as much money on a non-alcohol beverage. Like an adult beverage, you actually, if you really put it down to nickels and cents, depending on, you can make more because you're not having to put that alcohol in there, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to offer it. I mean, I know I go to restaurants and the mocktails are almost as expensive as the cocktails, right? And so it makes sense. However, what we have to challenge is the contracts that are there, the ones where you have to sell so much alcohol or have so much, where if we can revise those contracts to be like, you have to sell so much, adult beverages. Adult doesn't mean alcohol. It doesn't have to mean alcohol, right? Just give me a good drink. I want to have something that's fun and has an umbrella in it and it tastes great, just like everyone else. I just don't want alcohol in mine.
Well, like you said, some of those non-alcoholic mixers and things, they're not necessarily cheap, so there's still the opportunity for the venue to make money on the drink.
Right.
But it doesn't have to necessarily include alcohol. I know one of the other issues, and I'd like if you can tell the little story from your book about the importance of the bartender education. I know your story was about using the little, cute little drink
stirrers.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yep. So like I said, I've been to so many conferences. I have so many stories in the book just to give examples, because if you're not somebody that you resonate with this, like maybe you've never paid attention or noticed, these stories are to help you say like, oh, okay, I can see why this is an issue. And one of the stories was we had our logo for Sober Life Rocks is this really cute little puzzle piece. And so we had stirrers made with the puzzle piece on it to identify the drinks with no alcohol and also to bring awareness to our group. And so the idea was the bartender was going to add the stirrer to the alcohol-free drinks. Well, I noticed that there's a lot of drinks going past my booth with our stirrer in it. And I'm like, this is amazing. But then I start to think, I don't think that this is right. So I go to the bartender and I ask, we're in New Orleans in the conference. And I said, what is in that drink? He said, a hurricane. And I said, is there this drink, the stirrers for the non-alcoholic drinks? Why are the stirrers in there? And he's like, well, there's not alcohol in there. Now, I don't drink anymore, but I remember when I drank Hurricanes, I don't think Hurricane is anything but alcohol. And I'm like, I don't think you can make hurricane without alcohol. Like there's some drinks you just can't recreate. So I reached out to the conference, the meeting planner, and I said, they're putting him on all the drinks. And he says, there's no alcohol. And there was actually a girl I talked to who mentioned, yeah, he said, there's no alcohol. This is really good. And she was drinking it. So the conference, the meeting planner was like, oh my gosh, no, that's wrong. And she runs down to the bar and she's like, you're putting him in the wrong drinks. He's like, I had no idea. Now, the girl that I had saw that was drinking it came up to the booth like an hour later. She saw me and she said, I just found out that drink actually had alcohol in it. I haven't drank in 3 years. I'm feeling quite tipsy. Oh. And she was kind of laughing. It all worked out okay. But my thing here is that what if she was counting days? What if she was in recovery? What if she was pregnant?
Exactly.
What if she had an allergy or a thing? So this bartender is not usually at conferences and events like this. He's not a trained bartender. He works for food and beverage. He walked up and they said, hand out drinks. And he did what he thought was best. But he's not recognizing the importance of what he's handing over. No fault to him. But this one turned out okay. But what if there were other ones where, I mean, people who do count days that it really matters to them, that could have been a life-changing event. And so we need to honor that more and respect that more when we talk about how we're giving out drinks and the importance of that bartender behind the bar.
Well, and the legal liability as well.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah. So, it is really important, like you said, that everybody, every step along the way is educated, that the event planner understands, that the bartenders understand what it is that they're serving, and that the attendees fully understand what it is that you're offering, and how this is different and how they have these different options.
I just got back from a conference last week where I'm friends with the conference planner. And a lot of times people will say, because they know of my movement, they're like, oh, we have alcohol-free options. And they're all excited. And I'm like, yay, that's great. And so I go up to the bartender again in a conference room behind a black bar last week. And I said, what do you have that's alcohol-free? Now, for somebody newly in recovery, that would be hard to ask over the loud DJ and but I don't care. I've been sober since 2020 and I'm kind of loud. I can handle it. And I'm like, what do you have that's alcohol free? Because they had their bottles of beer on this side and their bottles of wine over here. And, you could point, I'll have one of those, but they didn't have any alcohol free options. And he said, he had like Bud Light Zero, alcohol free, whatever. And I said, well, why don't you have it out on the counter? And he's like, because we only have 2 per bar. And so we want to keep them cold. So technically they had a 12-pack of this alcohol-free beer amongst their bars, but nobody would know to ask for them.
Because it's not visible.
They were back on the ice and they weren't visible. And then honestly, I didn't drink Bud Light when I drank. I'm not going to drink a Bud Light Zero. And I'm not knocking Bud Light Zero. Sorry, Bud Light, if you're listening. But they had an IPA, they had a pale ale, they had a Hefeweizen. I want those options too. And so we have to make it easy for people to order. We have to let them know there's options, because if we don't let them know there's options, we're going to just continue to do the same thing. And I do get pushback sometimes about if we order this alcohol-free stuff and it expires, we're going to lose money. Well, you got to put it out there. So those of us that we want to drink it will order it, so that it won't expire, so that we can order more. It's like a kind of a 3-prong effort to change this. So,
well, and if they just would make the option available, they might discover that they do run through them. They might even run out.
Exactly.
Like you said, if people are taking advantage of that, but they're not going to take advantage if they don't even know it's there.
Exactly.
So, and I think one of the other things that you even mentioned in your book was that there's the ADA issues as well.
Well, yes, there is, and this is not my forte, but with Sober Life Rocks, we have talked to so many people in the sobriety area that there are issues with regards to employment, HR, ADA, conferences being accessible for all different types of needs and requirements. And this is one. And again, like we talked about, vegan and vegetarian, I don't know how many years ago they were separate. Now they're one and the same in all the events. And that's the same with this. But there's a lot with regards to travel and work. If it's a work event and you have to go, that you have to be given the things that are needed to help you with, if you're in recovery or have come out of something like that. So again, if this is someone listening, you can Google it and find out. But it's just one more reason just one more, like kind of on my list of checklists. Why should I care? That's just one more reason on the list.
Exactly. Well, and another thing that you talk about is that it's not only just designing a menu that's got options, but it's also kind of rethinking your event space and how the flow of the event is going to happen. So talk a little bit about that.
So again, in the book, I don't actually even know how many chapters I have in the book. I have it here, but there's only 2 actually about the bar and the alcohol. The rest is about the rest of the conference. So many times people aren't going to conferences because there is so much focused around alcohol, or there's so much focused in the evening event. And like I said, we can find so much online. So part of the inclusion starts before people show up. Are you making sure it's clear that you're going to have sober options for people? Like, instead of calling it a cocktail hour, maybe cocktails and mocktails, or a networking time. Are all your networking events always over the bar? Because you can network over coffee, you can network over yoga, you can network at lunch. So having options to make it clear that there's going to be networking that's not always around the bar. Then when they arrive, having ways that people can get connected, because a lot of times when people, and I'm included, when I first got sober, I thought I was the only person not drinking in the room. And then I found out that there's a large percentage of us who aren't drinking. And when I know somebody else is in the room that doesn't drink, so the next time you and I are together at a conference, I won't feel so alone, right? So letting people feel connected on this, which is what we're trying to do with Sober Life Rocks, is get people connected so they know of each other. And then at the event, looking at the actual design of the event, the programming. For example, many times we roll up the black bar and we have a loud DJ, or I was at an event last week with a loud band, right? I can't talk over that.
No.
We're yelling, right? Maybe the beginning is fine, but after a while, I'm not drinking, so I'm not getting all loopy and dancing on the dance floor, but you and I may still want to have a conversation.
Exactly.
Right? So looking at the space and having a space that can overflow outside of we don't want the kids' table. We don't want to be put in like a room by ourselves, but put some couches outside, put some standing tables where it's easy to walk up to somebody and start a conversation and it's not so cliquey. Have it overflow so I can run in and dance to the song that I want to run in and dance to, and then I can come back out and continue my conversation with you. Things like that is what I outline in the book, because it's not just about the bar. It's about making everyone feel included when they're at the conference.
Well, and I cannot tell you how many events I've been to over the years where people around me, whether they're drinking or not, are complaining about this music is so loud. We can't even have a conversation. If you're designing an event to be an after hours networking, then why is it an after hours dance club? I mean, it's like a nightclub scene, instead of being, hey, we've got some music, we've got, like you said, there's a dance floor over here in the corner if you want to take advantage of it, but there's also plenty of room, plenty of space within the room where people can have those conversations, which is the entire point of why you're there. I mean, if somebody just wanted to go dancing, they could find a nightclub somewhere in that town while they're there and go.
Well, and the evening can elevate. That's one of the, it can start, from like 6 to 7. We have background music from 7 to 8. It gets a little bit more from 8 to 9, 9 to 10. There's some dancing, and then take the roof off, because most people who aren't drinking are probably going to be heading back because we value our sleep and we want to get up in the morning and stuff.
Right.
So you can have a combination of both. It just doesn't need to start like at number 10 at the beginning, because we're here to network.
Yes. I really like that, how you said, like, kind of ratchet it up as the evening goes along. It's like, it makes so much more sense, because then you can, as you've had enough and everybody starts to get a little bit more inebriated, then you can pull out and head back to your hotel room. So
exactly.
Laura, there's so much more we could talk about here, but tell us, how can people best get in touch with you and learn more about Sober Life Rocks and your book and all that?
So Sober Life Rocks is a community where we help normalize sober choices in the professional space. We feel that there's a lot of people who are either suffering in silence or sober in silence, especially in their professional space. And a lot of times with your business, you can't choose if you're going to that sales dinner or that conference. You have to go. And so Sober Life Rocks is a movement helping with that. We have a LinkedIn group. So if you search Sober Life Rocks community, that community is just all around. You don't have to be sober to be in it. We have HR professionals and event planners and in the group, but we're all on the discussion around sober choices. My book's The Inclusive Event Planner is available for a free download. So if you just go to inclusiveeventplanner.com, there's a free download. You can also order it. So if you want the hard copy, but please download it, share it, send it next conference you're going to, send it ahead to the conference planner, help change the way we look at this, because what we start pushing for now, it'll take some time, but I really want to have it be to the point where you can walk into an event and nobody cares what's in your cup. That's really what I just want to say, I'll have that. And someone says, okay. And we leave it at that because it's our choice.
I love that. Yeah. And to be able to have those options, I think is going to be a great thing too. Laura, thank you so much. And we will have links to all of these things in the show notes. So be sure if you're listening and you want to check some of this out, make sure you go check those show notes for more links and connect with Laura on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for being here, Laura, on Trade Show Insights.
This was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, you can subscribe to the Trade Show Insights podcast and automatically receive future episodes on your chosen device. Simply search for Trade Show Insights in Apple, Spotify, or virtually anywhere else that podcasts are found, then click the subscribe button. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog as long as it's shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights. Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or the contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.